Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Faithful One. I'm Alaina, back with another episode. And the subject that Marco gave me was God's plan. And so I'm going to kind of talk about his plan versus my plan. So someone who trusted in God's plan was Abraham. In Genesis 22, verses 1 through 3, it says, "And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here am I. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into a land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will show thee. And Abraham arose very early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took two of the young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up, and went into the place which God had told him to go." So basically, if you don't know the story of Abraham and his wife Sarah, they wanted a child for a very long time. They waited like 25 years after God had promised him, and even when they had Isaac, they were very old. One day, God tells Abraham in verse 2 to basically go into a mountain that God will show him and sacrifice his one and only son. But Abraham didn't question verse 3, and he rose early in the morning. So a lot of times we question whenever God sets out a plan for our life, or he, says, okay, I'm going to need you to do this, I'm going to need you to do this. But we're like, really? But be like Abraham when he didn't question. Verses 6 through 8. Now, and it says, "And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son. He took the fire in his hand and the knife, and they both went of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for the burnt offering. So they both went up together." So at this point, Isaac is confused. He's like, okay, he kind of knows the drill of like a burnt offering and what to do. And he's basically like, Dad, what are we going to sacrifice? We have the wood to build the altar. We have the fire to do the sacrifice. But what is the sacrifice? And Abraham just kind of had to roll along with it and just kind of be like, hey, God will provide. And Abraham trusted that his God would provide. Verses 9 and 10 says, "And they came to a place which God had told him of him, and Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him upon the altar of the wood. Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son." Abraham was fully committed to what the Lord had planned, and not knowing what the outcome was. All he knew is that God had promised him a son, and he had now had to sacrifice the one son that he had promised. We would question too at this point, when God has promised us something, but then he says he's going to take it away. We would question too, right? A lot of times we hold ourselves back and say, no, my way is better, but in reality it's not. So continuing on, verses 11 through 13 says, "And the angel of the Lord called out unto heaven, and the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thy hand upon thy lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing that thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by the horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him as a burnt offering instead of his son." So basically, the Lord was just testing Abraham to see if he would truly trust the plan that he had set out before him. In verse 17, this is the promise that now God gives to Abraham. "And in that blessing I will bless thee, and multiply thee, and I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies." Obviously, you can't count the amount of sand on a seashore, or you can't count the stars in the night sky. So we are all basically descendants of Abraham because of Abraham following what the Lord had said. Think what can happen now if you can trust his plan. So now we're going to look at someone who trusted their own plan, and that is Jonah. So in Jonah chapter 1 verse 1 through 3, it says, "And now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah, the son of and mighty, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for behold, for the wickedness is come up before me. But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord, and went down to Joppa, and he found a ship going to Tarshish, so he paid the fare, and he went down to it to go with them unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. Basically, Nineveh's over here, Tarshish is over here. Jonah's supposed to go over here, but he said no. I'm not going there. Those people are crazy. They're wicked. Not doing it. So he went this way to the opposite direction. This is direct disobedience towards the Lord. Verses 4 through 17 is basically when Jonah is now on the boat. There's a big storm that comes, water's coming on, and Jonah's asleep in the back of the boat. And so all the other people on the boat are freaking out, like, what do we do? They're throwing stuff over, trying to get the weight lighter, so that way the storm, won't sink their ship. And so finally they wake up Jonah, and they're like, dude, you gotta see what's happening. And so Jonah finally is like, it's me, I'm the problem. You need to throw me overboard. And so they throw Jonah overboard. And in verse 17 it says, Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Because Jonah disobeyed, he got eaten by a fish and stayed in there for 3 days. And later on in the book of Jonah, it says that it takes him back to Nineveh, where he was originally supposed to go. So this can just show us that nothing can stop God's plan. If this is what God has set out for our life, nothing can stop it. Jonah was a man who followed his own plan because he didn't want to follow God's, and we saw what happened. I'm not saying you're going to get eaten by a fish, but you never know what can happen if you follow your own plans. So just kind of a little bit of application to wrap it up. And it says, when you follow God's plan, you will have inner peace with what you're doing. You'll have clarity and direction. You will have a greater purpose to serve to. You'll have spiritual growth easily. Divine protection. You'll have doors open that you didn't even expect to open. You'll walk through your walk of faith, and these doors will open and opportunities will come, so that way you can share the gospel, or it will lead to the path that God wants you to have. You'll have struggles with a purpose. You'll realize that you're not just struggling in life to struggle, but you're struggling for the kingdom of heaven, and it's all to fulfill his kingdom. You'll have peace in the waiting. You won't just be waiting and anxiously and being like, what's next, what's next, but you'll have peace with it. You'll have God-centered relationships. You will lose some friends, and you will gain friends. I have personally learned this, that not everyone is who they say they are, and so some friendships will die off. It's called the death prayer. Lord, if it's not your will, remove it from my life. That will happen. And then you'll live with an eternal purpose. You will realize there's more to this life than what we're living right here, right now. So that's all I have. Thank you guys for watching this episode of Faith in One. And yeah, thank you, Marco.